President Trump has said if Joe Biden is formally confirmed as the next US president, he will leave the White House. However, he has also insisted the race is far from over. What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is what we're going to hear from President Trump right up until January 20th. Just earlier today, a court in Pennsylvania threw out yet another one of the president's challenges to try and overturn the vote there. And despite some gestures towards a transfer of power, the fact is, I think we're going to continue to hear the president's bluster right up until, and frankly, after he leaves office.
Eliot, we saw a little earlier in the show, and I know we made a couple of attempts to get to you, third time lucky, so it's good to be talking to you. It was quite ironic, the manner in which he addressed the journalist in that when he flipped out, so to speak. That's what everyone's been saying online. And he said, that's not the way to speak to the United States president. You're a lightweight. He was talking more like a supreme leader than an elected official, wasn't he?
That's quite right. I mean, that is, of course, not the sort of manner in which people speak to the press in this country, certainly not elected officials. This, of course, could well be tied to the narrative that a lot of reports have indicated that President Trump is trying to lay the groundwork, one, potentially for another run for the presidency in 2024, or perhaps by developing his own media network to challenge conservative news outlets. And certainly going after the press is pretty good red meat for his base, and one can certainly regard his speaking to the reporter that way as laying the groundwork for his next career move.
We know that you've just had Thanksgiving. It's a very important day for many Americans. President-elect Joe Biden and many medical officials had advised people to stay home. It didn't look that way. We've seen record increase in COVID cases. Hospitals are absolutely full to the brim. What are the ramifications going to be like with Thanksgiving? We've got Christmas, the festive season. It's all happening with lots of people around.
You're absolutely right. Unfortunately, people are not taking COVID restrictions, or at least recommendations, as well as they should. Several million people traveled by air in the U.S. this past week. That's a number that approaches numbers we saw at the very beginning of the pandemic. And unfortunately, with the Christmas holiday just around the corner as well, we're likely to see a similar number of Americans traveling, which, of course, is one of the most potent ways to spread this virus, or excuse me, this pandemic. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be looking at any sort of curve flattening here in the States anytime soon.
All of these desperate legal cases, is it getting much traction in the US about the cost involved of these legal cases, in the sense of what is happening with COVID-19 and the people being hit, dying and getting sick, of predominantly the socioeconomically challenged because of a crippled health system?
Well, certainly the president's focus right now on trying to overturn the election has a huge cost, of course, that we are basically rudderless right now in this country. We don't have a commander-in-chief who is focused on the greatest health challenge this country has faced in over a century. This has been, of course, exacerbated by the fact that the president has only just this week allowed the official transition to take place, allowing funds and access to information to President-elect Biden and his team. So we're very much paying the price for a president who is just not taking this pandemic seriously.
You mentioned the health crisis, Eliot, and we're seeing on screen a vision of people with masks getting tests for COVID-19. As we mentioned before, the cases are going through the roof, but you're also heading into winter. You've got the actual flu cases to contend with as well. You've had school closures. The latest on vaccinations, what can you tell us? Because we're hearing, that there is hope with many different companies.
Yeah, about 3 different pharmaceutical companies this week, in the last several weeks, have indicated that tests have proven roughly 90% or more efficacy with a number of vaccine trials. That, of course, is not necessarily going to solve everything overnight. These things take time. We will likely see medical professionals and the most vulnerable Americans, as with the rest of the world, receive vaccinations first. And public health officials, such as Anthony Fauci here in the U.S., have reminded Americans, despite the development of potentially effective vaccines, we could well be looking at another year, if not more, of a kind of shutdown-based existence.
What has been the perception of President-elect Joe Biden through this period? From outside looking in, it looks like his stocks have risen enormously because the rhetoric so often was coming about Sleepy Joe, this, that and the other. We know he's been a long-term politician, vice president for many, many years, but his sense of calm and his sense of direction and positivity, I think, has had an effect.
You know, Sleepy Joe is absolutely right, and I think that's very much why we're seeing the markets and other corners of society react pretty positively. You know, this week, President-elect Biden has been rolling out his nominees for his cabinet, and these are by no way flashy nominees. His nominee for Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen, was the former Fed chair, by no means a sort of political operator. His chief of staff, Ron Klain, is a longtime Washington operator. And so there's a real kind of steady as she goes, you know, no flash, mostly substance to the administration that President-elect Biden is building. Now, that hasn't always been greeted with the most enthusiasm, for example, from his progressive flank. But certainly from the perspective, say, of markets, you know, we are not looking at a terribly volatile or groundbreaking administration, which if you're Wall Street, that's kind of what they're looking for.
These next few weeks are going to be fascinating, as it always is fascinating. Great to have you on board. As Tim said, third time lucky. Eliot Nelson, thank you so much. We'll speak to you again soon.
Thanks so much.